I still remember the smell of that morning, the stench of wood ash mixed with something heavier, metallic, and wrong. It was the smell of burned blood. That was the first sunrise I saw in Namyang, the village that no longer had the living. They said the case was closed years ago. A family of 5, father, mother, 2 daughters, and the grandmother, had built an altar, soaked the floor in kerosene, and set themselves on fire. No one knew why. The police report said mass delusion. The church said blasphemy. But the villagers whispered something else. They were chosen, and they opened the wrong door. On the wall of their house, written in a jagged line of dried blood, was a single warning. We have purified our souls. Do not open the cellar. 10 years later, Namyang disappeared from every map. The roads were reclaimed by weeds. The air was too still, as if even the wind refused to remember this place. My name is Jeon Min-seok, 37 years old. I am what people in Seoul call a mudang, a shaman. But my path is not the traditional one. I was trained by a Buddhist hermit who spoke Latin prayers, and later I served under a defrocked Catholic priest who believed demons were simply faiths gone wrong. Between their contradictions, I learned to hunt the voices that hide behind belief. I didn't choose this life. It began when my sister died at 12. She drowned in a river that, for reasons no doctor could explain, was shallow enough to stand in. After her funeral, I began to hear things. Whispers that called my name at dawn. Footsteps that followed behind me, but never left prints. I thought I was losing my mind. Then one night, a voice in my own room said, "You will pay the debt of blood." I never slept well after that. Every exorcism since then has been a kind of bargaining. With spirits, with kanmo, and sometimes with my own conscience. But Namyang was different. I was not invited there. I was summoned. 3 days before I arrived, a parcel was left at my doorstep. No sender, no address. Inside, a small wooden cross soaked in pig's blood, a handful of torn Bible pages, and a note that said, "He has returned, the one who offered blood." On the back of the last page was my own name, scrawled in faded ink. Jeon Min-seok, 10 years ago. But 10 years ago, I had never been to Namyang. At least, that's what I believed. That night, I dreamed of fire. A house stood in the middle of a forest, burning without smoke. On its cracked walls, my name was carved deep with something sharp, beside a blackened handprint fused into the plaster. When I woke, the smell of blood lingered on my ritual robe. I drove to Namyang the next morning, alone. The road narrowed until the asphalt turned into dirt. The air grew colder, the sky a pale blue like an old bruise. By noon, I saw the first sign, a half-buried crucifix by the roadside, its wooden surface darkened with dried stains. At the village gate, the houses were boarded up. Every window was nailed from the inside. There were no animals, no birds, only the sound of my footsteps on gravel. A wooden church stood at the center, its bell tower cracked and leaning. Inside, the altar was overturned. A silver basin for holy water lay on the floor, filled with a black liquid that smelled like iron. Bible pages were pasted on the walls, written over with strange characters. A mix of Hangul, Latin, and something older. I picked up one torn page. A drop of dried blood stuck to the corner. Underneath the faded verses, someone had written, "You cannot exorcise what you once invited." Then I heard it, a faint sound from beneath the floorboards. 3 knocks, slow, deliberate, like something waiting for me to answer. I froze. My hand instinctively reached for the cross in my pocket, but the wood felt warm, pulsing faintly, almost alive. And then, from somewhere below, came a voice that sounded almost like my own, whispering a prayer I had never said. "In the name of He who was unmade, open the door." I turned toward the trap door near the altar. The hinges were sealed with wax, but the wax was cracked, as if someone had already tried to open it. That was when I realized this wasn't my first time in Namyang. It was my return. The silence in Namyang was not natural. It pressed against my ears like water, dense and heavy, until every breath I took felt stolen. I parked the car at the village entrance, though calling it an entrance was generous. The signpost had fallen, its wooden planks splintered. Faded paint spelled Namyang in Hangul, and below it, in shaky red letters, someone had written, "Do not pray here." The road sloped downward, winding through rows of houses that leaned inward as if whispering to each other. Every home was sealed with nailed planks. Curtains still hung inside, faded by the years, unmoved by wind. Time itself had stopped breathing here. I passed the remains of a market square, just 3 stalls and a rusted weighing scale. A calendar from 2015 still clung to a wall. December, the month the family died. I didn't bring much: my ritual bag, a voice recorder, a worn Bible that belonged to my mentor, and the wooden cross from the parcel. My breath steamed white in the cold. No birds, no insects, even the trees looked petrified. At the far end of the village stood the house, the one in the reports. I knew it instantly, though I had never seen it before. A small 2-story structure, windows shattered, roof sagging. Charred streaks still stained the walls, like the shadows of fire that refused to fade. I stepped inside. The floorboards moaned under my boots. The air smelled faintly of ashes, kerosene, and decay. To the left, a kitchen. The pots still hung neatly, rice bowls covered in dust. To the right, a living room. On the wall, above a burnt altar, I saw a photograph, a family portrait, the father, mother, 2 daughters, the grandmother, all smiling. But the photograph was burned at the edges. The father's eyes were missing, scraped out with something sharp. I felt a pulse in the floor, faint, rhythmic, like a heartbeat beneath wood. When I looked down, I saw it, a faint line cutting across the living room, the outline of a cellar door, sealed with wax. The wax was old, yellowed, cracked. Written across it were the same words from the police record: "Do not open the cellar." The moment I crouched to inspect it, my recorder in the bag clicked on by itself. A voice began to play, distorted, distant. It was the sound of someone reciting Latin, a prayer used in blood exorcisms. The voice was mine. I turned off the recorder, or tried to. The red light stayed on. That was when I heard it, a faint tapping from beneath the floor. 3 knocks, slow, exact. I whispered, "Who's there?" No answer. Then another 3 knocks. I waited, frozen. The wax seal trembled slightly, as if something beneath it exhaled. The wooden cross in my pocket grew warm again. I pulled it out. The blood that had dried days ago now looked wet, glistening in the faint light. I didn't open the cellar. Not yet. Instead, I walked upstairs. The bedrooms were untouched. The smell of incense lingered. On the wall of the master bedroom, someone had written Bible verses in Korean. Each verse was followed by a name, then crossed out. At the very bottom, one name was left untouched: Jeon Min-seok. My name. I stepped closer. The handwriting was not the same as the others. It was mine. I wanted to deny it, but the loops of the characters, the tilt of the strokes, I recognized them. I had written this. Somehow. Then I saw the object on the table, an old rosary, half-burned, beads blackened. I picked it up, and beneath it lay a folded piece of paper. It was a page torn from a diary, the handwriting shaky but readable. He came at night. He said he could cleanse the voices. He brought the wooden cross and told us to bleed upon it. We trusted him. His name was Min-seok. My throat went dry. The diary belonged to the father, Han Jong-ho, according to the police report. He had written that entry a week before his family died. So it was true, I had been here before. But when? And why didn't I remember? Outside, the wind began to rise. I looked through the cracked window and saw a movement near the church. A silhouette, tall, thin, walking slowly among the graves behind it. The figure stopped, turned toward the house, and I could swear it was wearing a priest's robe. I grabbed my bag and went outside. The air had grown colder, sharper. The clouds above were unnaturally low. The figure was gone. Only the church remained. Standing crooked, its wooden cross at the top tilting toward the ground. Inside, everything was wrong. The altar had been overturned. A pool of black water shimmered on the stone floor. It smelled metallic. Candles were melted into the shape of twisted faces. And at the center, nailed to the wall, were pages from a Bible, all of them torn and rearranged to form one sentence. Faith is blood. As I read the words, something behind me whispered, "Then bleed." I turned. No one. Only the echo of the words stretching through the cold air. My voice recorder clicked on again, without me touching it. Static, then a whisper. "You left me here." The sound came not from the recorder, but from beneath the church floor. I dropped to my knees, placing my ear against the wood. There it was, faint breathing, and then a whisper in Korean, "Welcome back, Father." I stumbled backward. My knees hit the overturned altar. The cross in my hand burned against my palm. I could hear my heartbeat pounding in my ears, fast, desperate, wrong. And through that sound, something else pulsed beneath the floor, something that breathed in rhythm with me. I backed away toward the door. The church seemed smaller now, the walls closer, the air heavier. I turned the handle, but it didn't move. Locked from the outside. Then a voice, deep, cracked, yet familiar, spoke from behind me. The ritual was never finished. I turned, and in the dim light standing behind the altar was the silhouette of a man in a tattered priest's robe, his face hidden by shadow. He raised his hand slowly, pointing at me. The movement was stiff, like a marionette pulled by invisible strings. Then he said in my voice, "You will finish it this time." The candles went out. Darkness swallowed everything. When the light returned, it wasn't from the candles. It was blue, the sickly glow of dawn pressing through the church windows. The priest was gone. The air reeked of burnt wax and damp wood. My body ached as if I had been kneeling for hours, though I didn't remember falling. The door was open now. I walked outside, the cold slicing through my breath. The entire village was still. Every window stared blankly back, every door sealed. But the silence had changed. It wasn't empty anymore. It listened. I knew I had to check the cellar. Whatever had happened here, whatever connected me to this place, waited there. I returned to the house. The wax on the cellar hatch had melted away overnight. The warning, "Do not open the cellar," was now nothing but a smudge. The wood was damp. When I placed my palm on it, it pulsed once, faint but alive. I took out my recorder and set it on the floor beside me. "Session 1, I whispered. Namyang. Subject, cellar beneath residence of the Han family. Initial anomaly. Auditory knocking and self-activation of electronic devices." The moment I finished the sentence, 3 knocks answered from below. Slow, even. I swallowed hard. "If there's a presence below," I said quietly, "identify yourself." Nothing. Then 2 knocks. A pause. 1. I didn't recognize the pattern, but I knew it wasn't random. It was a response. I broke the seal and lifted the hatch. A wave of cold air spilled out, carrying the stench of mildew and rot. A ladder descended into darkness. My flashlight flickered as I stepped down. The cellar walls were stone, damp and uneven. At the center stood a small wooden altar, blackened by soot. Above it, a crucifix hung upside down. The metal figure of Christ was missing. Only the nails remained, rusted and sharp. I swept my light across the walls. Words were carved everywhere, overlapping each other in both Hangul and Latin. Some were prayers, others were names. Every few lines, one word repeated: Min-seok. I stopped breathing. There must have been hundreds of carvings, my name written again and again, as if etched by desperate hands. Then my flashlight caught something at the base of the altar, a small iron bowl, half filled with a dried, dark residue. Blood. Human. Old. The air thickened. My breath came out as mist. The recorder upstairs clicked on again, though I hadn't touched it. My own voice echoed faintly down the ladder, distorted. Faith is blood. You will finish it this time. And then, from somewhere in the darkness, a sound. Soft, wet, like cloth dragging over stone. "Who's there?" I asked. No answer. Only that dragging sound, closer now. My flashlight flickered, dimmed, then died. In the dark, I heard breathing, slow, heavy, almost in sync with mine. Then a whisper, inches from my ear. "You opened it again." I stumbled backward, hitting the altar. The crucifix above it began to sway, though there was no wind. Something brushed my shoulder, bowed and coarse, like wet hair. I raised my hand and traced a protection seal in the air, murmuring a mantra from the Vajrakilaya rites. The words trembled from my lips. Umbenza kili kilaya sarwa bighan bamhun fat. The whisper stopped. The air shifted. When I turned on my flashlight again, the cellar was empty, but the altar was different. On its surface, fresh scratches had appeared, a sentence carved deep into the wood. "It wasn't them who burned, it was you." My stomach turned. I touched the carved letters. The wood was warm, as if still bleeding heat. I climbed out of the cellar, slamming the hatch shut. The recorder was still running upstairs, looping a single phrase in my own voice. "Do not open the cellar." The same tone, the same rhythm, except the recording was dated 2015, 10 years ago, the night the Han family died. I had recorded it, but why? Outside, the light dimmed as a cloud swallowed the sun. I needed answers, something tangible. The police report, the church records, anything. I went back to the church. Its air was colder now, the black water in the basin frozen solid. The crucifix on the wall had fallen, and behind it, scratched into the plaster, was a name: Father Benedict Han. I remembered the name. He had been excommunicated decades ago for performing blood sacraments, rituals mixing faith and sacrifice. According to records, he disappeared after burning down a chapel in Busan. The same symbol on his old relics, a cross soaked in blood, was carved into every door in Namyang. I sat in a pew, my hands trembling. The voice in the cellar, the carvings, the name, all led back to one truth I didn't want to face. Father Han and I had crossed paths before. My mentor used to speak of him, a man who believed sin could be purified through shared suffering. That true redemption required pain. He had been banished, but his teachings survived among a few underground sects. If the Han family had followed him, then they didn't die because of a demon. They died completing his ritual. And I had been part of it. I looked up at the altar. The walls around it began to sweat moisture, trickling like tears. From the floorboards, a faint knocking started again. 3 knocks, then silence. Then 3 more. Then silence. It wasn't coming from below anymore. It came from behind the altar. I walked toward it. The wood was cold, the paint peeling. Beneath it, the knocking continued, slow and steady. I pushed the altar aside. Behind it was a wooden panel. I pulled at it. It came off easily. Behind the wall was a hollow space, no larger than a coffin. Inside lay a pile of charred robes and a rusted chalice filled with something black. And there, resting against the wall, was a mirror, old, cracked, the surface darkened by soot. As I lifted the flashlight, the reflection trembled. The room behind me was visible, but I wasn't. Only the empty air. Then slowly the reflection of a man appeared where I should have been. Wearing a priest's robe, face hidden in shadow. He raised his head. His face was mine. The mirror cracked down the center with a sharp snap. The knocking stopped. I left the church and didn't look back. The cold followed me through the trees, the air too still for breath. I sat inside the car, recorder still playing. The last sound it captured was faint, a whisper between static. You never left Namyang. You just forgot which side of the fire you stood on. The engine refused to start. The sky turned gray. Somewhere behind me, 3 knocks echoed. Not from the cellar, not from the church, from inside the car. The knocking inside the car stopped as suddenly as it began. Silence poured in, thick, watchful, deliberate. I forced myself to breathe. My fingers trembled on the ignition key, but the engine still refused to turn. The dashboard lights flickered once, twice, then went dark. In the glass of the windshield, my reflection stared back at me. For a moment, I thought I saw someone else sitting in the back seat, a shadow, long and still. But when I turned, there was nothing. I stepped out into the cold. The sky hung low, a dirty sheet of gray pressing over the village. That was when I noticed movement inside the Han house. A curtain swayed, slowly. Someone or something had gone back inside. I should have left then. Every instinct told me to, but fear is useless to a man who no longer trusts his own memories. I returned to the house. The door creaked open by itself as if expecting me. Inside, the air had changed. The scent of burned incense mixed with something faintly sweet. Rotting fruit maybe, or old blood. Dust floated in the stillness, catching light that didn't seem to have a source. I followed the faint sound of paper rustling to the second floor. The master bedroom door was ajar. Inside, the desk lamp was on. I hadn't turned it on before. On the table lay an old leather-bound notebook, the same one I'd glimpsed earlier. The initials HJH were carved into the cover. Han Jong-ho. I sat down. My hand hesitated before opening it. The first few pages were normal. Household notes, expenses, dates. Then the handwriting shifted. The words grew erratic, pressed deep into the paper as if carved with anger. He came with the rain, said he was sent by God. His cross dripped red but did not rust. He told us our house was sick. He said purification must be done through the blood of believers, that the faithful must become the vessel for God's anger to leave the earth. We bled. He said the more we bled, the lighter we would feel. It was true. For a time, the voices stopped. He told us to carve his name into the altar so that God would remember who offered the sacrifice. His name was Jeon Min-seok. The pen dropped from my fingers. My vision blurred. The next line was half smeared with dried blood. He said he would return when the moon turned blue, and when he returns, we must burn. At the bottom of the page, written in a different hand, smaller, neater, was a prayer. Forgive us, Father, for we have mistaken the demon for the priest. I turned the next page. A photograph was glued there, an old Polaroid. It showed the family kneeling before the altar, candles surrounding them. Standing behind them was a man in black, holding a cross in one hand and a bowl in the other. His face was turned toward the camera, my face. I dropped the notebook. It landed open on the final page. Someone had drawn a symbol there, a circle divided by a cross with letters written in Latin around its edge. I recognized it instantly. The ritual of transference, a forbidden rite used to move a spiritual burden or a sin from one vessel to another. It required one element above all: belief. The stronger the faith, the more complete the transference. I began to understand. Father Han must have used the family as vessels. I, or whoever I was then, performed the ritual, thinking it would banish something. Instead, it passed it into them, and when it consumed them, I erased it from memory, or someone erased it for me. I closed the book, my hands shaking. "What did I do?" I whispered. From behind me, a soft creak answered. The door. I turned. A figure stood in the doorway. A woman, face pale, eyes hollow. Her clothes were burned, edges blackened. She stepped into the light. Her lips moved soundlessly at first, then formed the words, "You promised we'd be free." Her voice was brittle like dried leaves. She raised her hand. The skin was cracked, revealing dark veins beneath. She pointed toward the floor. "The cellar," I said. She nodded. Her face began to crumble, ash flaking from her skin like dust in the wind. I reached for her, but she collapsed soundlessly, scattering into nothing. The room fell silent again. Only the faint sound of whispering came from below. The cellar. I took the notebook and went downstairs. The hatch waited open. The smell rising from it was stronger now, iron, smoke, and something sour. I turned on the recorder again, my voice trembling. Session 2, I believe the Han family performed the ritual of transference with me as officiant. Possible possession event. Subjective time loss confirmed. A whisper echoed up from the cellar, mimicking me word for word. Session 2, possible possession event. I froze. "Who are you?" "You are." The air thickened. The temperature dropped so sharply my breath crystallized midair. The hatch slammed shut. My flashlight went out. In the dark, the voice came again, this time calm, almost kind. "You came back to finish the rite." I backed away, clutching the recorder. "No, I came to end it." A laugh answered me, low and hollow. "End and begin are the same." The hatch began to throb, a slow, rhythmic pulse. Then came the sound of something scraping wood from underneath. The boards bulged upward as if something inside pushed against them. I recited the cleansing sutra under my breath, but the words tangled, distorted. Each syllable came out wrong, reversed. The pressure stopped. I dared to lift the hatch again. The cellar was empty, but on the altar below, the symbol from the notebook had been freshly carved, still wet, lines red and glistening. The ink wasn't ink, it was blood, and written across it in my handwriting were 3 new words: "Faith is flesh." When I stumbled back outside, the sky had darkened, though it was still midday. The entire village seemed to tilt, as if the ground itself exhaled. I looked toward the church. A bell was ringing, slow, deliberate, though there was no wind. Someone was calling me back, and this time I knew who. The church bell rang 12 times. Each strike echoed across the valley like a heartbeat stretched too long. By the 12th, the air itself seemed to recoil. I followed the sound. My legs moved without my consent, as though something older inside me already knew the path. The door to the church stood open. The candles I'd seen melted into grotesque shapes before were now upright, burning with blue flames. The air smelled of wax and salt. At the center of the altar lay the Han family's photograph, the same one from the bedroom upstairs. Only now, every face had been burned away except mine. I didn't remember ever being in that photograph. But there I was, behind them, dressed in black robes, holding the same blood-stained cross that now throbbed in my pocket. The bell stopped. The silence that followed was not peace. It was waiting. Then came a sound, faint, brittle, wood cracking. The floor beneath the altar bulged upward, dust trickling from the seams. Something underneath was pushing against it. I stepped closer. My boot brushed aside soot and ash that had been layered for years. Beneath it, faintly visible in the dim light, was a second altar, one carved directly into the foundation of the church. I knelt, brushing away more ash. The carving revealed itself, a circle surrounded by inscriptions in Latin and Hangul. The same sigil from Han Jong-ho's notebook, but older, deeper, raw. At the center of the circle, a name was chiseled into the stone. Jeon Min-seok. My fingers went numb. The date beside it, December 12, 2015, the night the family burned. For a long moment, I simply stared, unable to process what I was seeing. Then, without warning, the blue candle flames began to flicker. The shadows lengthened, stretching across the walls like ink spilled on paper. The church moaned, wood contracting, stone shifting. And in that low groan, I heard a whisper form my name. Min-seok, finish it. I rose to my feet. What do you want from me? You began it. The cross in my pocket pulsed once, hot enough to sting my thigh. I pulled it out, the dried blood on it now wet again, running down onto my hand. The faith must return to its source. The voice was everywhere, in the rafters, in the floor, in the hollow between each breath. I looked down at the name carved in stone and saw something impossible. The letters began to sink, as if drawn downward by gravity, disappearing into the earth. The stone rippled like water. From beneath the floor came a slow, steady heartbeat. I took a step back, and no more rituals, no more blood, then no more faith. A blast of wind tore through the church, extinguishing the candles. My flashlight flickered on by itself, beam trembling. It caught something at the far end, a figure kneeling in the shadows. A priest's robe, torn, black with soot. He lifted his head. It was Father Han. His eyes were burned out, sockets hollow, skin gray. Yet his lips curved into something that wasn't a smile. "Do you remember, my child?" he said, voice brittle. "You begged me to teach you purity. You said you would give anything to silence the voices. I never..." "You did." He reached out his hand. His fingers were thin, bone showing through skin. "You spilled the first blood. You believed." And faith answered. I felt it then, a weight in my chest, heavy, suffocating. Memories flickered behind my eyes, a younger version of myself kneeling before this very altar. The Han family behind me, chanting prayers. Father Han beside me, whispering that salvation required sacrifice. The flash of a knife, the sound of weeping turning into song, the smell of burning. I staggered backward, clutching my head. "No, I tried to stop it." "You tried to stop yourself." The ground shook, cracks split across the stone floor, glowing faintly red beneath the dust. The name Jeon Min-seok reappeared, brighter now, glowing like iron in a forge. "The offering was incomplete," Han said. "They burned for their faith. Now you will burn for yours." He raised his hand, and the candle flames erupted back to life, not blue this time, but blood red. The air filled with the sound of whispering prayers, dozens of voices overlapping, pleading. I gripped the cross, forcing the words out between clenched teeth. "In the name of the holy, I break this covenant." The cross grew hotter. The blowout on it hissed into steam. The red flames dimmed, but only slightly. Father Han laughed, a rasping, hollow sound. "You cannot break what you carved." He stepped closer, his burned feet leaving no sound on the stone. "Look at the altar, child." I looked. The carved circle began to shift again. The lines rearranged, the symbols twisting, until the name at the center was no longer Jeon Min-seok, but Jeon Min-seok, 2015. No end date, still open. The ritual never finished, Han whispered. You live because it continues. End it, and you end yourself. I felt the cross pulse again, rhythm matching my heart. The realization struck me like cold water. The cross itself was part of the sigil, a vessel. As long as it existed, the rite lived. I threw it onto the altar. The blood hissed against stone. The flames roared higher, twisting upward into a column of smoke. The church shuddered. Windows shattered outward. In the chaos, Han's form began to disintegrate, his body fracturing like glass. You can't unmake belief, he whispered as his face broke apart. Only transfer it. Then he was gone, collapsing into a storm of ash that vanished into the air. The flames died instantly. The light returned to normal, but the cross was gone. Only a small patch of blackened stone remained, shaped like an open eye. And beneath the silence, faint but certain, I heard something new. The heartbeat was gone. For the first time since I entered Namyang, the village was truly still. I walked outside. Snow had begun to fall, fine, white, unreal against the gray landscape. The houses were silent, the sky pale. For a moment, I thought it was over. Then I looked down at my palm. A small mark had appeared there, a circle divided by a cross, fresh, red, as if burned from within. The same sigil. And when I pressed my hand against my chest, I felt it again. The heartbeat, slow, steady, coming from inside me. Snow blanketed Namyang overnight. By dawn, the village had vanished beneath white silence, the world reduced to pale earth and frozen breath. I hadn't slept. The mark on my palm kept throbbing, a faint warmth pulsing in rhythm with the slow and natural heartbeat inside my chest. Each pulse whispered faintly, like breath against my skin. Believe. I packed my few belongings into my bag, but the weight of the cross was gone. The space it left felt heavier than the object itself. Outside, the snow fell soundlessly. The church loomed in the distance, its roof now collapsed inward. Beyond it, the forest blurred into fog. I turned toward the Han house one last time. The windows were dark again. No movement, no voices. Still something inside called to me, soft, persistent. The mirror. The memory hit me without warning. The cracked mirror behind the church altar, where I had seen a reflection that wasn't mine. The priest, his hollow eyes, his face shaped like my own. I needed to know if it was still there. Inside the church, frost had crept over the walls, turning every surface into a dull sheet of silver. The altar was half buried under debris from the roof, and behind it, the small wooden panel I'd torn open remained ajar, revealing the dark space beyond. The mirror was still there. I brushed away the dust. The crack that split it down the middle now bled faint streaks of black. Not paint, not glass corrosion, but something thicker, fluid, alive. When I looked into it, the reflection was faint. At first, it was just me, tired eyes, pale skin, the mark still glowing faintly in my palm. Then the light flickered. The reflection blinked, but I hadn't. Slowly, my mirrored self lifted its hand and pressed it against the glass. The gesture was exact, except for the eyes. The reflection's eyes were gone. Two smooth hollows stared back at me. I froze. The air around the mirror grew colder. My breath fogged the surface. Then, in the faint layer of mist that formed, words appeared, traced as if from the other side. I took them so you could see. The handwriting was mine, I whispered. What are you? The reflection tilted its head. When it spoke, its mouth didn't move. The words came from everywhere and nowhere. I am what you made to silence the faith. You're not real. I am what's left when belief outlives the believer. The mirror pulsed once like a heartbeat. My reflection began to fade, not disappearing but draining, as if its outline were being absorbed into the glass. Look closer, it said. You never stopped the ritual. You only moved it. The glass rippled. For a moment I saw flashes behind the surface. Faces, hundreds of them. Their mouths open in prayer or screaming, I couldn't tell. And at the center of them all stood Father Han, his hollow eyes bleeding black tears, hands raised in benediction. Faith cannot die, he whispered from behind the guasen. It only changes its vessel. The mirror cracked again, this time in multiple places. From each crack seeped a black mist, drifting upward, twisting into the shape of hands reaching outward. I stumbled back, but one of the shadows caught my wrist. The touch burned cold. The mark on my palm flared red. The mirror voice whispered, you see now, you carry the altar. I tore my arm free, ripping skin. Blood spattered across the floor, bright red against gray stone. The mirror reacted instantly. The cracks pulsed brighter, veins of crimson spreading across its surface like fire through ice. Blood remembers, it hissed. The voices returned, the chanting from the night of the fire, overlapping, distorted. The mirror vibrated, glass trembling, as though the thing inside it was trying to come through. I ran. The church doors slammed shut behind me. The bell above, broken and half-fallen, began to ring again. Without wind, without reason. I found myself outside the Han house again, though I didn't remember crossing the distance. The snow had stopped. The sky was a colorless gray. My reflection followed me now. In the window glass, in puddles of melted snow, even in the dull metal of my car's mirror. It always stared back, eyeless, silent. I reached into my pocket and found something that shouldn't have been there. The wooden cross. It was whole again, but blackened entirely, as if carved from shadow. I wanted to throw it away, but when I lifted it, my hand refused to let go. My fingers locked around it. Then I heard his voice. The vessel is ready. It came from everywhere. The snow, the walls, the air itself. Faith is not in the altar, Father Han whispered. Faith is in the witness. The mark on my palm flared again. The heartbeat inside my chest quickened. For a moment, I thought I saw light bleeding through my ribs, a faint red glow beneath my skin. I dropped to my knees in the snow, whispering a prayer I hadn't said in years. Om Mani Padme Hum, deliver me from the shadow of my own belief. No answer, only the faint sound of weeping. When I looked up, the street was filled with figures, dozens of them, standing in silence. Men, women, children, the Han family, and others I didn't recognize. All eyeless, all watching. Their mouths moved in unison. No sound came out. Then, one by one, they raised their hands. Each bore the same red mark on their palms. And then they whispered all at once, though none of their lips moved, you see now, you are the mirror. The words echoed in my head until I couldn't tell if they were inside or outside me. The figures faded with the snow, leaving only silence. The air around me felt lighter, but my own shadow on the ground stayed wrong. It lingered half a second longer than it should, head tilted like the reflection in the mirror. When I returned to the car, I caught sight of myself in the rearview mirror. My eyes were gone. Morning came gray and weak. The light had no warmth. I wrapped a bandage over my eyes and drove until the road ended. The snow thinned, the trees opened. Namyang refused to let me leave. Every turn brought me back to the same place, the church. Its bell tower leaned like a broken neck. The air above it shimmered faintly, the way air does over heat, except the air was cold. The door stood open. Something wanted me inside. I stepped in. The interior had changed again. The pews were gone. In their place, hundreds of wooden crosses hung from the ceiling by red cords. Each cross was small, carved crudely, names scratched into their surfaces in both Hangul and Latin. I walked among them. They swung gently, whispering as they touched each other. Some names I recognized: Father Kim Do-hyun, Sister Cho Hee-jin, Park Min-soo. Every one of them, exorcists, shamans, monks who had vanished over the last decade. I counted 27 before my breath caught. The 28th cross bore my name, Jeon Min-seok, still wet, the letters freshly carved. I reached up and touched it. My fingers came away red. The faithful bleed, so faith may live. The voice echoed from above, calm and certain. Father Hans, I looked up. The ceiling beams were blackened with soot, but movement rippled through the shadows. Shapes shifted. A dozen figures clung upside down to the rafters like insects. Their robes were priestly, their faces eyeless. One of them dropped soundlessly to the floor before me. It straightened, its head tilted, its mouth opened. "Do you renounce doubt?" I said nothing. The figure stepped closer, its voice layered, many voices speaking at once. "You came seeking purity. You found truth. Will you bear it?" I raised my hand. The mark on my palm glowed faintly through the bandage. "I never asked for this." "All faith begins with asking," it said. "You offered your blood long ago. Now you must offer your sight." I ripped the bandage off. The world swam, shapes blurring, shadows alive. In the reflection of each hanging cross, I saw fragments of myself, praying, chanting, kneeling in firelight. 27 reflections, one for every missing exorcist. Each one turned its head toward me and spoke the same words: "Faith is flesh." The air thickened. My heart stuttered. The cross with my name began to twist slowly, the wood creaking. I grabbed it, and pain shot up my arm. The cross was warm, wet, bleeding. A drop fell from its base, red and thick. The scent hit me. Iron, salt, human. "You see now," Father Hans' voice said, "every believer becomes the altar they fear." I turned toward the sound. He stood at the end of the aisle, robes moving though there was no wind. His hands were clasped, his hollow sockets fixed on me. The ritual of the faithful continues. Each who believes too deeply becomes a vessel. "You believe most of all." He lifted his hand. The crosses began to sway violently, striking each other, the sound rising into a low hum. The church shook. Dust fell from the rafters. "Your doubt kept the door closed," he said. "Your faith opens it again." Behind him, the altar split open down the middle, revealing a dark passage descending into the earth. From within came a faint, rhythmic beating, the same pulse that now matched the one in my chest. "Come," Han whispered. "See what you have built." I stepped forward. Each movement felt heavier, as if gravity itself deepened with every step. The crosses swung violently now, cords snapping, falling around me like rain. Every one that hit the ground bled. When I reached the altar, Han turned and began to descend the steps into the darkness. I followed. The tunnel walls were carved from stone, slick with moisture. The deeper we went, the louder the heartbeat became. Finally, the passage opened into a chamber lit by candles that burned black. At the center stood an enormous wooden crucifix, not upright, but laid flat, as if awaiting a body. Every inch of it was engraved with names. Some I knew, some I didn't. At the center, carved deeper than all the rest, was mine. Han stood beside it. "Here lies the faith you buried," he said. "It remembers you." He reached out. "Lie down." I shook my head. "No." "Then it will come to you." The ground trembled. The heartbeat grew louder, not one but many, overlapping. merging. The wood of the crucifix began to writhe, swelling as if something beneath it struggled to breathe. When faith loses object, it finds flesh, Han said. The faithful cannot die. They inherit you. The cross split open. A surge of black liquid spilled forth, thick, glistening, alive. It crawled toward me across the floor, leaving trails that smoked in the candlelight. I stepped back. The liquid reached my boots, hesitated, then rose, forming the shape of a hand. It touched the mark on my palm. The contact burned cold. Visions flooded in. The night of the fire, the family kneeling, me standing over them, chanting, their screams blending into prayer. And over it all, Han's voice. When faith and fear become one, the door opens. The chamber shook violently. The candles burst, spilling dark flame across the floor. The black liquid surged upward, wrapping around me like smoke, whispering words in my own voice. Believe, believe, believe. I fell to my knees. The mark on my palm blazed white hot. The sound of my chest became thunder. I shouted the only words I could remember. Om benza kili kilaya sarwa bighan bam hunfat. The chamber erupted. Light, pure, blinding, filled everything. The cross cracked, splitting into splinters. Hans screamed, his form unraveling into dust. The light consumed the black liquid, turning it to ash, then silence. When the light faded, the crucifix was gone. The names on the walls had vanished. I stood alone in the dark, smoke curling from my skin. The mark on my palm was gone, but the heartbeat in my chest remained. Slower now, steady, patient. And from somewhere deep below the floor, a faint whisper rose, almost too soft to hear. Faith is never destroyed, only carried. When I opened my eyes, I was outside. The snow was gone. The ground steamed, wet and dark, as if rain had fallen only here, nowhere else. Namyang lay silent again, but not empty. I could feel movement beneath the soil, something breathing. The church behind me had collapsed entirely, the spire buried under ash, and in the air, faint and trembling, came a child's voice. You shouldn't have said the mantra. I turned. A small figure stood at the edge of the village road, barefoot, wearing a white dress smudged with soot. Her hair clung to her face in tangled strands. Her eyes were hollow, yet I knew them. Inji, I whispered. My sister smiled, though her lips didn't move. You remember now. I froze. You died when you were 12. Did I? Her voice came from everywhere. The trees, the houses, the ground beneath my feet. The wind shifted, carrying with it the faint smell of burned rice and candle wax, the scent from her funeral. She took a step toward me, bare feet leaving no prints. You tried to save me, she said, but saving and summoning are the same when you use the wrong prayer. I didn't summon you. No, she said softly, you summoned something else. I just came with it. The world tilted slightly, as if the air itself bent around her. She stopped a few feet away, head tilted in that way she used to when she teased me as a child. Only now her expression was empty. Do you remember the river? The word hit me like a blow. The shallow river near our home. The day she drowned. I saw flashes, sunlight on water, her laughter echoing, then silence. My hands dragging her body to the bank. But in the memory, she was whispering something even after she'd stopped breathing. A prayer. Unji stepped closer. Father Han was there, watching. That's not possible. He died before, not dead. Waiting. The air around her shimmered. Firelight flickered behind her eyes. He came to you that night. He told you she could be saved if you gave her voice to him. The rest of the memory returned like ice through my veins. I remembered the ritual, my shaking hands tracing symbols into the dirt, chanting words I didn't understand. The river glowing faintly red, Unji's eyes opening, and then the whisper that followed me ever since. You will pay the debt of blood. I fell to my knees. I didn't mean to. You made a promise, she said gently. You said you'd give anything for my soul to rest. I would have done anything. You did. Her voice darkened. You gave faith a body. The sky dimmed. The world around us shimmered, melting at the edges. The road, the houses, the trees all fading, replaced by darkness. Only the two of us remain, standing in a field of red light. The ground cracked open, revealing fire beneath. The same glow I had seen in every vision of Namyang's burning. But this time the fire didn't consume wood or flesh. It burned shapes, memories, every prayer I had ever spoken twisted in the flame, reshaping into words I no longer recognized. Yoonji's voice softened again. You can't exorcise what you built, Min-seok. You tried to drive faith out of others, but you kept it alive inside yourself. I was trying to destroy what Han made. You are what Han made. Her form flickered, heat waves rippling through her body. Behind her, the fire shifted, taking shape. A massive wooden altar, split and blackened. At its center, a small shape lay curled, motionless. I stepped closer. The shape was a child. Her. The same white dress, the same hair. Her small hands were folded across her chest. She looked peaceful. Yoonji's voice came from behind me now, close to my ear. You sealed me inside the altar to stop him. To stop you. I turned. She was inches away. Her eyes were filled with flickering firelight. But you didn't seal me alone. You sealed your faith, your guilt, and your name. The ground rumbled beneath us. The altar began to split open. From within came a dim glow, pulsing like a heartbeat. Now you've opened it again, she said. You've let it breathe. The fire rose higher, licking at the air. In its roar, I heard hundreds of voices. The lost exorcists, the Han family, Father Han himself, all speaking in unison. Faith must burn to live. Eunji extended her hand. Her palm bore the same mark that had once been on mine. Come with me, she said, finish what you started. I took a step back. I can't. Her expression didn't change. Then it will follow you. The altar exploded. The fire consumed everything. When I woke, I was lying on the ground outside the ruins of the church. The snow had returned. The world was quiet. For a moment, I thought it had been a vision. Then I saw the small footprint beside me, bare, delicate, half melted into the snow. And beside it, written in ash, the river remembers. I looked at my palm. The mark was gone again, but the skin there was blistered, as if burned from within. When I placed my hand against the earth, I could feel it, faint, rhythmic. The heartbeat had returned. Only now it wasn't inside me. It was beneath me. The ground was alive, and somewhere deep under Namyang, something or someone was still burning. The snow melted overnight. By dawn, the ground steamed again, carrying that smell, iron and incense. I could feel the pulse beneath the soil, a slow rhythm beating in counterpoint to my own. I set up my recorder, old habit, proof that the world outside still existed. I spoke into the mic, voice low, steady. Session 3, Village Namyang. Temperature below freezing, soil warm. Recurrent sound underground surface, resembles heartbeat. As I spoke, the playback light flickered, a hiss of static. Then my voice answered from the speaker. Session 3, Faith persists beneath flesh. I switched it off. The red lights stayed on. The air vibrated faintly, a low hum that felt more inside my skull than in my ears. It was rhythmic, like a chant recorded underwater. I crouched, pressed my hand to the ground. Sound traveled upward, a human voice, singing, not a language I recognized. Half Latin, half Hangul, fractured, reversed. I placed the recorder directly on the soil. Capture mode continuous, I said, and waited. The song went on for 7 minutes. Slow. Rising, falling, then silence. When it ended, I played it back. What came through wasn't the same sound. The voice was mine, speaking backward. I adjusted the playback direction. The phrase unfolded, slow and deliberate. You pray to end the song, but you are the song. I stopped breathing. The next words were faint, distant, like an echo from deep below. The river remembers. The fire waits. The recorder clicked off. I sat there for a long time staring at it. The sky darkened, though the sun hadn't yet set. Every sound in the air stopped. Even the wind died. Then the ground beneath me shifted. A fissure opened between the stones. Small at first, then widening. From within rose the smell of ash and wet wood. And under that, the faint, distinct sound of water. The river. Except Namyang had no river. Not anymore. I followed the sound across the ruins, down through the hollow where the Han family's house once stood. The cellar hatch was gone. In its place, a narrow stone stairwell descended into black water. I turned on my flashlight and went down. The steps were slick. The air felt heavy. At the bottom, I found the source. A pool stretched beneath the village. A subterranean river still and black as glass. The walls glisten, carved with symbols I recognized from the journal. The ritual of transference. In the reflection of the water, faint light flickered. Candles that weren't there. And behind them, faces. The Han family, the missing priests, even my sister kneeling. Mouths moving in prayer. I leaned closer. Their lips moved faster. The surface rippled. And when the sound broke through, it was singing again. The same melody, reversed. The words translated roughly to, faith consumes what it worships, flesh becomes its hymn, sing backward and return. I whispered, return where? To the beginning. The voice was right behind me. I turned. The eyeless priest stood waist deep in the water, robes floating around him. You tried to burn the hymn, Mom, he said, but fire only inverted it. Now it prays through you. He lifted his hands. Ripples spread from his palms across the black surface. The reflections distorted. The faces bending, mouths stretching open, singing louder. Every word you spoke in God's name rewrote the song, he said. Every exorcism was another verse. No, I whispered. I was casting them out. You were calling them home. The water began to rise, swirling around my ankles, then my knees. I tried to move, but the current pulled me toward the center. Beneath the surface, shapes writhed. Hands, pale and trembling, reaching upward. When you prayed for silence, Han said, you offered your voice. The hymn took it. The faces in the water opened their mouths wider. The sound became unbearable, every note backwards, every word twisted into something inhuman. I shouted a mantra, but the sound warped, reversed midair, playing back through the recorder still in my hand. Faith must speak to live, my reversed voice said. Silence is death. The river boiled. The air turned white hot. Then, quiet. The water dropped suddenly, leaving steam rising in slow ribbons. Han was gone. Only the pool remained. And from its center, something floated to the surface. My old recorder, though I'd never dropped it. The casing was cracked. The play button glowed red. I pressed it. A single sentence played, clear, unmistakable. You are praying right now. Then static. I looked around. The walls pulsed faintly, veins of red light running through the stone. The entire chamber was alive, breathing. And then I understood. The village wasn't haunted, it was praying, endlessly, backward, through me. The air thickened, vibrating again. My ears rang. In that noise, words formed. Dozens of overlapping voices chanting in reverse. I fell to my knees, pressing my hands over my ears. The mark on my palm flared again, white hot. When I opened my mouth to scream, the sound that came out wasn't mine. It was the hymn, backwards. When I woke, I was lying beside the ruins of my car at the village gate. The recorder rested on my chest. The play light still glowed. I played it one last time. It was quiet, then a single phrase spoken in my own calm voice. Next verse begins at dawn. I looked east. The horizon bled red, and beneath my feet, faint but growing louder, the heartbeat began again. Dawn came in silence. The sky was the color of blood diluted in milk. The ground under Namyang shivered with each breath I took. The village was awake. I walked toward what was left of the church, carrying nothing but the recorder and a single candle. No wind, no birds. The snow had melted completely, revealing soil dark as dried blood. Each step drew a hollow sound, like walking over a drum. The heartbeat below had grown faster. By the time I reached the church's ruins, the sun had frozen halfway over the horizon, pale and unmoving. I placed the recorder on a stone and pressed play. Static hissed, then my voice, calm, steady, older somehow. Final session, termination attempt. The rite cannot be undone, only redirected. Sacrifice must complete the circle. Memory is the vessel. I didn't remember recording it. I lit the candle and set it on the ground. Its flame was steady despite the cold air. Then I spoke aloud. Om mani padme hum, Deus insanguine purifica. The words twisted halfway through, shifting into something else. My mouth kept moving, but I didn't control it. The ground answered. A sound rose beneath me. Not the heartbeat this time, but a low, resonant hum that shook my bones. The stones around the altar began to glow faintly red, the same sigil I had seen so many times forming again in the cracks. At its center, a shape emerged, a spiral of ash and light, breathing like a living thing. I knew what it was, the soul of the ritual itself. The voice of Father Han returned, quiet, almost tender. You have come full circle, Min-seok. Faith remembers its first believer. You used me. You offered yourself. I was a child. Children believe more perfectly than priests. The spiral pulsed, the candle flame elongated, bending toward it. I saw fragments in the light. My sister's face, the Han family kneeling, the mirror without eyes, the river burning backward. Every moment I'd ever tried to forget, alive again. Every prayer is a seed, Han said. You watered yours with blood. It grew. What do you want? Not want. Complete. The spiral expanded, forming a ring around me. Symbols burned in the soil. Hangul, Latin, Sanskrit, each word merging into the next. The candlelight turned black. Han's voice deepened, splitting into many. The final offering is remembrance. Give it, and the hymn will end. I understood. The ritual wasn't about death. It was about erasure. To end it, I had to forget everything. Namyang, the fire, my name, even the idea of faith itself. But that meant losing her too. Unji. The spiral shimmered, waiting. Her voice came from the edge of the ruins, soft, almost human. You can let it rest now, Alpa. She stood there, barefoot in the ash, eyes gentle. If you remember me, it never ends. I can't forget you. Then you can't stop it. The heartbeat below grew louder, faster. The air cracked with heat. The spiral closed in, symbols burning brighter. Han's voice whispered, "Speak your name." I hesitated. Speak it, he said again, and it will be gone. I closed my eyes. The words rose from somewhere deep, older than language. My name is... The rest vanished in the wind. White light, then nothing. I woke lying in the same place, but the world was quiet. The ruins were gone. The houses were gone. Only the field remained, dry, empty, nameless. The candle still burned beside me, though its flame was colorless now. The recorder was in my hand. I pressed play. A single sentence played, spoken in a voice I barely recognized. Mine, but hollow. The rite is finished. The believer is no one. The heartbeat was gone. For the first time, the silence felt clean. I walked to the edge of the field. A river ran there now, clear, slow, reflecting a sky that no longer bled red. The current whispered against the stones. For a moment, I thought I saw a small figure standing across the water. A girl in a white dress. She smiled. Not a ghost smile, a real one. Then she was gone. I dropped the recorder into the river. It sank soundlessly. The ripples spread outward, then faded. I looked down at my hands. The mark on my palm was gone. My name felt distant, unanchored. When I tried to recall it, nothing came. Only the echo of a voice. Not Hans, not my sister's, not mine. A single phrase whispering from the water. Faith sleeps. Namyang, 2025. No one remembers who ordered the excavation. Satellite imagery showed nothing. Just farmland in a faint circular depression where the old village once stood. But when the construction crew broke ground for a new highway, the soil began to smoke. By afternoon, they found the stones. Blackened, fused together, forming the rough outline of a church. The air above the site shimmered with heat, though the temperature was freezing. They called the police, then the local diocese. By nightfall, everyone had left except one investigator, Sergeant Park Jin-woo, 43, Rural Crimes Division. He waited beside the excavation pit, holding a flashlight and a cigarette he never lit. The wind was still. In the report he would file later, the last report of his career, he described hearing a low sound from underground, a steady thump. Thump. At first he thought it was machinery, then he realized it matched his pulse. When he swept his light over the pit, something glimmered in the soil, a piece of metal, small, square. He climbed down and brushed it clean. It was a recorder, old, rusted. He pressed play. Static. Then a voice, hoarse, faint, but clear. Do not open the cellar. Park froze. He rewound it, played it again. Same words. But the second time, a faint echo followed, a whisper beneath the voice. He opened it again. The soil beneath his boots shifted. A hollow space collapsed. He fell through. When he came to, he was lying in a tunnel. Damp stone, the smell of burnt wood. His flashlight flickered over carvings on the walls, hundreds of names, each one followed by a date, the last one fresh, scratched into the rock. Jeon Min-seok, December 12, 2015. Park turned slowly. At the tunnel's end stood a wooden cross, half buried in the dirt, still smoking though no flame burned. Behind it, a mirror, cracked. He raised the light toward it. His reflection looked back and blinked. The beam faltered. He reached out, touched the glass. It was warm. Faith sleeps, a voice said behind him. He turned, no one. When he looked back at the mirror, the reflection was gone. Only a small flame remained burning inside the crack. He stumbled backward, fell against the cross. It broke under his weight. A rush of air erupted from the ground, the sound of a sigh, centuries old. Then the tunnel caught fire. He ran. The flames weren't red or yellow. They were white, silent, consuming light itself. He escaped the pit just as the ground collapsed behind him. The earth caved inward, swallowing everything. By dawn, the site was nothing but scorched dirt. 3 days later, the police returned. Nothing remained of the excavation. No recorder, no church stones, no tunnel. The soil was glassy, black, smooth as a mirror. Park was placed on medical leave. His superiors dismissed the report as trauma. He never filed the recording into evidence, but he kept one copy. On sleepless nights, he played it again, just to be sure it was real. Static, then that voice, calm, steady, distant. Session 4, Namyang, faith returns through memory. A pause. If you hear this, pray backward. Then silence. He stopped playing it after the 12th time. By then, he had begun hearing knocks under the floorboards. 3 knocks, always 3.